No worries.
So everyone in the room can see me then, can they?
Yeah.
Okay, well, hello to everybody. Right, yeah, as I was just filling in for Dave Cornish, I did have a chat with him and he did fill me in about what he was going to talk to you guys about. But what I think would probably be the most pertinent is to tell you sort of the angle that I come at it from. Thanks for my little introduction. And so basically, I'm one of two area managers that works for JSD, and we're sort of contracted by GB to look after MPVs and the ENVU trains from an operational and maintainer perspective. And also we offer basis advice. I'm a basis advisor and I offer basis advice to Network Rail for the delivery of which products are most suitable, and to work within the best practice principles, and to look for future products that we can use going forward for both the on track mounted vehicles and for the hand spray teams. So twofold really what we do. We look after the database for Network Rail for seasonal, and which sort of encompasses looking at all the restrictions that may well apply due to special protected areas, environmentally protected areas, and then water courses and all the rest of it. So we have the database that we manage and we update annually with the Environment Agency. So we have a tight link with the Environment Agency to build that framework, so we know that what we're doing is feasible, allowable, which is in collaboration with Natural Resources Wales, Scottish Heritage, all the water authorities, South Western Water, all water authorities nationally, and then it's pulled together with the EA, and then that information, unfortunately, it comes in various guises, as you can imagine. It's not necessarily going to come in one format that we work with that we can then just simply put into the database. So unfortunately, it has to be, it's a manual job, and I spend from probably the beginning of October looking at that information, working it through to make sure that it's ready for delivery to add into our database to then hook up. Now it's with ENVU, with Adrian's team, to look at putting that into their system, so that then they've got all the restrictions on their systems to be able to know where they can and can't spray from a point of view of using either residuals or just glyphosate only or no spray sites. So from that point of view, we have, I can show you the way that our database works. So there's some pretty pictures rather than just looking at me. So if you bear with me a sec, I'll share my screen with you. If I can do that. Can I do that if I'm share my content? So can you all see that now?
Yeah, it's coming through, mate.
Yeah. So basically what you can see there is the front end of our database, which we have for a system that works, which some of you Network Rail guys may well have already seen in part, but this is what we see as from a management point of view. So we have a home screen, a planning screen, a scheduled screen, reviewing complete. So this is when circuits have been run. So let's just take it from the basics. So if we look at planning, so this was from hand spray 2022, so just going back to the beginning of the season. So we can see that this is where we were. So we were planning all these sites. There was about 900 odd hand spray sites last year, and the current plan was that we were doing 1,000. It's only 1,000 miles, but you can imagine that's quite a lot of. We manage that from the point of view of having teams of guys that go out knapsacking, which in this instance is weed free. So we manage what products they have and deal with all that as well. And then what was completed. So we managed to do 845 miles. So 81% of that was done. And obviously there's various reasons as to why they weren't treated. It was either weather, access. You can imagine a lot of them were probably access for main stations, and unfortunately due to this well, fortunately or unfortunately, due to the changes of zero tolerance of red zone working, they can only do it either within someone else's possession or getting line blocks themselves, which is obviously, as you well know nowadays, is quite difficult to achieve. So that was 81% was a fairly decent bite at the cherry for hand spray. So what you can see there is how we do it. I don't know whether you can see. Is the map come up yet?
Yep.
So as they go, we obviously do have a monitoring process as well. So as we go, each of these dots indicate a location, and each of these are surveyed either biannually or every 3 years. We'll go out and have a look at each of them. We only are contracted to do about 10%, but we often do more than that because we've obviously got teams on the ground while we do the treatment, but we also need to make sure that we do some surveys beforehand. So we do pre-treatment surveys. We send our lads out and they actually go out and do site surveys before the teams actually go out and hand spray. And we do the same with the MPVs or with the ENVU trains now that are coming online. We'll go out and survey the track and make sure that look at the quality of the track at the time of pre-treatment, and then what it looks like after it's had its treatment a couple of weeks after. So that's what we do for that. So the same for hand spray. So from the point of view of planning, a typical task sheet, some of you guys may have already seen that. This is what we're looking at. So not getting done this season, but Llandud Node Junction branch line was a site that was there was a couple of issues with the line going back a few years, and that used to get treated by hand, and now it's back to being treated by train. But this is the sort of things that we put together based on what products we're using. So you can see there, 2022 we were using Shikara, which is a flazosulfuron. We're using an additive to make that more efficacious, and we're using a Roundup as an additional product to kill any weeds that were there. Obviously, that's going to be, those sort of treatments are going to vary differently with the trains, which I'll leave Adrian to talk about in a bit. But we generally do it's a dual system. So we'd mix that. It would be a mix of Roundup and the Shikara to allow a sort of a comprehensive kill, if you like, which we would only use. So going forward, I guess the treatment would be that if it sees a weed, it's going to kill a weed, whereas hand spray, it's obviously just doing a blanket treatment, which obviously is in some ways decent, but obviously in some ways it does waste a little bit of product if there's nothing there actively growing, because obviously the residual product is there to stop the weeds from growing in the first place. So then we obviously review them and they're incompleted, and then we have a map showing what we have and haven't done, and that's available to the teams. Anyone that wants to see that from Network Rail's point of view, we can review it. They can have an ongoing system, and we have good contacts with everybody, so we can share that information as and when it's needed if there's any issues. And the same applies for, so if we just jump to the second spray from the machine based mounted, we can see what was scheduled. So we can actually choose a route. So here we go, we can choose a route. So if we choose north and east, we can actually just look. So we can drill down into the data and see exactly what's gone on, view the task sheet. So this is where we are. This is what a typical task sheet would see for an operator. So we provide for Network Rail or through GB, we supply the operators and the maintainers. The operators would get one of these on a night when we're actually on a shift. Obviously, most of these are done at night now, just due to track access. And this is the sort of things that they would be doing. They'd be marking down. This is what we work through from the point of view of looking at restrictions and sites that we can and cannot treat. So this is obviously this is that I'll just point out, this is second spray. So actually this is just looking at where we didn't treat track-based glyphosate only. So there's two different ways of looking at this, the treatment due to the restrictions. So we either have a blanket spraying, so we can treat every bear in first treatment, or we can have a glyphosate only sites, which we do every section of track which only gets glyphosate gets 2 treatments every season. If it's a blanket treatment, it'll only get the 1. So actually, from the point of view of the efficacy of the product that we're using, it's pretty good to see that most of the track that we look at these days is actually very clean, and that's with only basically one application a year, which is very, very good. But obviously some of these tracks get 2 treatments based on the fact that they're either there's a restriction there saying we can only do glyphosate only, or it's a no spray site. So these task sheets indicate to the operators where they can and can't treat, and this is down to the chain. You can just see that's a classic task sheet, what we do for that. So obviously we're offering, let me just shut that down so you can see me again. Okay, back to seeing me. Okay, so that's sort of the aspects of the drilling down into data when we're actually doing the operation on either an MPV. Slightly different for obviously for the ENVU trains now, but I'll let Adrian talk to you about that. We also offer, so we have the teams that actually in the early stages, we have the teams that actually plan all the circuits. So we have a team of 4 that actually do all the planning of each circuit that the MPVs or the ENVU trains treat, which is obviously working with Safety Central and all the planning, the network rail planning teams. So that's quite an arduous task, and we have to make sure that all the information that we need for the following season we get before the end of November, as we hope for. We have a 30th of November deadline for any sites that need to be additionally added for treatment, new bits of track coming online or old bits of track that are now reopening, etc., etc. So that's a big planning process, and it obviously changed quite dramatically when the ENVU trains came online last season. So that changed our planning teams. They had to basically throw the book out and replan from day one. So that was partly a good thing because it made us look at every single piece of track again. But it made it quite technically difficult for our teams, but there we go. That's one of those things. Okay, so obviously we offer a maintenance team, and we offer the herbicide and basis advice, which we give to Network Rail, which is done by myself and one of the directors, Tony Saunders. So it's been a challenge over the last 5 or 10 years, because as Adrian will know, the amount of products that are available for use in the amenity sector, which we for some reason are in working on ballast, we can only use amenity assured products, unlike the agricultural products market, which is much bigger. We're limited to a very, very select few products. So I think anyone that's in the industry that knows what we do and what ENVU do, it's a challenge based on what we can use as products. But we do have some very good products that have come to market that can do the job exceptionally well. But we also are going to be looking in the future for products that we can take forward that can do the same residual treatment as we will have with the products that we'll be using this coming season. I'll let you, Adrian, talk about those. So in a nutshell, basically what we do at JSD Rail is we offer that sort of technical advice, the planning advice, we offer the operational support, and we offer the labour for that. maintenance, and then the basis advice for the products going forward. So are you going to be talking about what products we're using this coming season, Adrian, or not?
No, it's
Okay,
specifically around the design of the train.
Okay, so would you like me to sort of talk a little bit about that, or?
Sound good?
Yeah, sounds good. Okay,
Yes, please.
so we'll be using a combination of residual products for the trains this coming season. We'll be using Valdor Flex, which is one of the ENVU products, and Valdor Solo, and then we'll be using some glyphosate based products as well, which is Pro Vantage. We'll be using there, which obviously will be supplied by NoMix. Obviously, if Dave's here, he'll tell you a lot more about that. Okay, so and that obviously these two products, they will be used. Normally, we'll be using those in rotation for best practice, but unfortunately, I think due to various technical difficulties, we're going to be using quite a lot of Valdor Solo, I think, this season, aren't we, Adrian? I think that's what we're going to be using quite a bit.
Yeah, 50-50 split, pretty much.
50-50 split, yeah, which we did use last season, but we unfortunately are in a situation where we're going to have to look at rotation as best we can. So one's a diflufenicate and the other's a flazosulfuron. Both of those products are residual products that stop the weeds from growing, so they stop seed germination, and then encompass that we would use the glyphosate based product that would knock any weed growth on the head as and when it appears on the ground. So which obviously is going to be dealt with very nicely with the ENVU trains coming online with their weed recognition system. So with that, I shall wrap up saying thanks for giving me the opportunity to speed you through what JS do and offer as a service, and thanks very much for listening. If there's any questions, let me know.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Ben, for stepping in at short notice. So
You're very welcome.
You were allowed to be classified as an agricultural, grain ballast was agricultural, would that make a big difference?
Sorry, I didn't quite hear that.
But Ben, the question was if the railway was classified as agricultural rather than an amenity, what difference would that make?
If ballast was classed as agriculture, we'd be open to a much larger remit of products available to us to treat basically. But unfortunately, it's not. It's only an amenity assured products that we can use based on that particular aspect of legislation. So, and it has been lobbied through the amenity forum, even for us, saying that rail should be considered in a different way based on where we have something like 2.5 million neighbours. We treat over 19,000 miles a year that runs predominantly through either industrial or agricultural land. So yeah, I mean it's a strange one, but we work with what we do, and fortunately with the products that we have, obviously we do trials with the products that we use pre using them on the network, even if they are approved for ballast use. But yeah, and they work actually, to be honest, fantastically well. Under a sort of normal weed spray regime, you would be looking at doing 2, possibly 3 treatments, and even 4 treatments annually to keep weeds at bay. But fortunately, we managed to do very well with 1 blanket treatment for the residual, and then a follow up with the spot treatment with the glyphosate. So actually, it does work incredibly well. We do, on the other hand, have some tricky hand spray sites, and then there's generally other reasons why it's not efficacious to its best ability, and often that's due to poor ballast conditions and stuff coming online that's been out of service for a long time. And we have you know, just a sort of slightly comical. We have some sites where our hand spray teams go to, and they've got, you know, revisiting sites that have still got 6-foot trees growing in the 4-foot that they're talking about bringing stuff back online, and they're trying to treat weeds around it, and it's sort of a back to front thing, but you know, it's all going in the right direction.
It sounds like we'd learned to work within the barriers that the amenity classification sets, and the products are doing the job.
Yeah, I mean, it's becoming ever more challenging as we look at the sort of the seasons changing. I mean, the growing season, as we all know, last year was well into September, which is, you know, and into October partly. So, you know, at some places in the country. So it is technically quite difficult. And obviously that hand in hand is technically difficult with the planning of getting circuits done. And I think, you know, really, with the amount of time that goes into the planning and actually how much track access we do get, based on the fact that there's, you know, we run the first treatment at 30 miles an hour and then the second treatment at 20 miles an hour for the scrub treatment, then, you know, it's actually you know, it's very impressive how efficiently it does get done and how successful we are.
Okay, we've got an online question from Richard Cunningham.
Yep.
He thanks you for stepping in. Then he goes on to ask, are there locations where you are prohibited from spraying, e.g. track locations where spray can filter into the water?
Yeah, there actually are. So obviously that hooks in with the Environment Agency and the restrictions database that we look at annually. So, and we work really closely with them, and we've my counterpart and myself, we have really close links with the Environment Agency, working on how we can work within the remit of the restrictions and what we need to do to keep the track clear. So we're working up to within 3 meters, and then obviously the way that the system works, it's switched off when we come to water bodies, when we come to bridges. So all that sort of thing is tied into the planning quite heavily, and I'm sure Adrian will touch on that maybe. So we are really closely linked, and we do look for opportunities where, based on the sort of the way that the restrictions are put together these days with the EA and the water bodies, they tend to not really look at it in a way that's sort of constructive from our point of view. So they'll say, oh, well, there's a water body here and it's 30 miles long. For argument's sake, we could look at something like Loch Lomond, and they say, well, you can't spray there, but we're not within 3 meters of the water body. So we point that out to them, and they say, okay, right, okay, so you can spray there. And we know that the trains are so specific with how far out they spray, and the operators are very, very well experienced in how they carry out their tasks, that we know that we're not going to come within 3 meters, and they don't need to restrict us at that point. So we do work, we do manage to get restrictions lifted on that perspective, so which is really good. So we have really good links, and it pays to have that.
Can I ask you a question, Ben, on chemicals?
Yep.
Various other parts of the world, America and what have you, glyphosate is coming under pressure and likely to be banned. If the UK follows suit, how does that affect your range of chemicals and efficiency?
Yeah, I mean, if glyphosate, I mean, I think there's a this is just me talking as an individual here, rather than as promoting any business or anything. It's just, but there was obviously everyone heard about the major court case and the big payouts for in the States. But basically, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Adrian, but we had a conversation about it, but actually it hit the news that actually there's no case to answer for, and actually they've been withdrawn, so people are actually going to have to be paying money back for claims they've had. But it's not sexy news, so no one gets to hear about actually a win for the industry, and that the product actually isn't as bad as it is, and there's no evidence to show that it actually causes any kind of cancers. And you're worse off having a cup of coffee or a bacon sandwich in the morning.
Well,
there's been more research done on glyphosate than any other anything else on the planet.
When I first met Adrian's boss, Alan, he said he would drink a glass neat. Oh,
Yeah, well, basically that's what the sales reps used to do back in the
It
day.
still hasn't though.
he hasn't, no.
No, but it is, yeah, I mean, it is true because, you know, if you understand the chemistry of glyphosate, it works. It's an amazing, I mean, I'm an environmentalist myself and I'm an ecologist, but actually when you look at the pathway that glyphosate takes, it only works on plant material. It only has an effect on the shikimic pathway in plants. So it actually has no effect on, you know, humans and things. It doesn't, you know, all the what worries about, I guess the beekeepers worry because it's killing plants and there's no pollinate, there's nothing for them to pollinate, you know, etc., etc. So I think it's had a lot of bad press, but it's been around a long time, and honestly, I hope it's there for a long time for the future, because actually it's a product that is so well tested. I mean, and it's the proof's in the pudding. There is no, yeah. Anyway, that's just my own personal opinion.
Any more questions? Louise?
Just for my understanding as much as anything, what is an amenity compared with agricultural? What other things fall into the category of amenities that makes rail feel like an anomaly?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, thanks for the question. It's a tricky one to try and answer, to be honest, but it's based on the porosity of a surface, and yeah, so it's sort of, that's why it's, because it's ballast and it's man-made rather than it being a agricultural surface, which is, again, to be fair, is man-made in a way because it's been furrowed, ploughed, drained, you know. So it's a difficult one. It's difficult. So, and it's a shame we end up in that sector. Yeah. So sorry to be sidestepping.
I think just explaining that it's classed as a man-made surface, I think helps us in that regard, Ben. And one more question.
Yeah, there's one online that's just popped up from Stephen Valentine. What is the driver for planning, signal sighting, safe cess, other, asking as a frustrated graduate, we lose too many structure surveys through vegetation obscuring the structure? So yes.
So who decides what gets treated, I guess, is the heart of the question.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is an interesting one because, you know, from the point of view of weed spraying and plant protection product control, we look to work with cut and clear teams to make sure that we follow a rotation from the cutting and clearing so that we can then manage the vegetation sensibly with a product, because obviously we're looking at best practice to minimize the amount of herbicide we're using, it, you know, hence the story with bringing on the ENVU trains, because you're going to minimize herbicide use even further. So we've been trying to get the veg management teams to work in process with weed spraying so that you can rotate products on a biannual basis, because unfortunately, based on track access, etc., we can only do 50% of any given, well, you can only do 50% of the network. So 50% of any ELR you can do on an annual basis, and then you can rotate it round. So for the last 10 years, I've been trying to talk to teams to get them to think about that. So 1 year you're treating half your section, and then the next year you're treating the other half of your section. So every 2 years you're getting the full benefit of weed spray, but we're not there yet. And it's I think the veg management team have a very difficult job. So it's a case of chasing tails. And unfortunately, sometimes we end up where there is a problem with vegetation and treating with, when we do bankside treatment, it's getting a burn back, but it's not actually doing a job that it would benefit from if the veg had been cut back previously, so it's an ongoing process. If that answers your question, Stephen, I don't know.
I think Steve was part of his question, knowing Stephen is a gauging engineer, he's saying that the vegetation is at the structure.
It's obscuring the structure.
But But you said earlier that you switch off the train as you go through a bridge, an underbridge.
Yeah, so if you're going
underbridge.
through something that's close to water, that would definitely happen. So then that's a case of so if it's a closed bridge and there's ballast on it, it will get treated from the cess and the forefoot point of view. But if it's bankside stuff, it won't do. If it's, you know, if you're going through a bridge that's got sides, then you won't. No.
And does that mean it's only where you've got a watercourse? If the railway's going over a watercourse, that's the only time you switch off. You spray otherwise.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
if it's a road
ditches,
bridge, it's
so
fine.
ditches and known watercourses that are on a link to the database. So culverts, you know, public footpaths. Sometimes you're not spraying there, but mostly watercourses and any other. So they could be talking about where sites are no spray. So there's probably about 700 miles of actually no spray sites, which actually have to be done by other means.
Sites of special scientific interest.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean,
That's
be
fine.
interesting to know where those sites are, because then you could tie those together. And happy to help if Steve wants to, get in touch with me. Then if he's got some sites, I can check it out on the database quite easily if they're part of that, and then drill down into that and see what the reasons are for that.
Excellent.
That'll be good.
Ben, thanks again for standing in at short notice, and
No problem.
it's been a really useful insight into how the operations manage day to day. So thanks again.
You're really welcome.
And we'll hand on to Adrian. Thank you.
Okay, enjoy, Adrian. Thanks.
Yeah, no, I was going to. Can everyone online see the presentation currently?
Yep.
Cheers. Right, good evening, everyone. I'm Adrian Marston, Rail Contracts Manager for ENVU, which, as Andy said, was previously division of Bayer. Bayer Crop Science, obviously. We'll go into that. So the agenda, or just going through the presentation. So firstly, who are ENVU? And we'll have a quick look at the legacy weed spray delivery, followed by new fleet introduction, which obviously we had a massive support from Adrian in that. And then the new SWS technology, SWS being smart weeding system. So firstly, who are ENVU? So introducing ENVU. ENVU was founded in 2022. So it's a new company built on years of Bayer experience for the sole purpose of advancing healthy environments for everyone, everywhere. We offer dedicated services in PPM, which is professional pest management, forestry, ornamentals, golf, industrial vegetation management, which obviously comes under the railway comes under that section. Lawn and landscape, mosquito management, otherwise known as vector control, range and pasture. Across each of our lines, business, we focus on work in chemistry and beyond, collaborating with our customers to come up with innovative solutions that will work today and well into the future. So, as I've said, ENVU, formerly Bayer Crop Science, have been operating trains in France and Germany for over 30 years, and the UK train was a variant of this. So if we look at the legacy weed spray, which obviously Ben was talking about previously. So from a planning perspective, like Ben said, the MPV, which is obviously in the image there, is a different size to what our train is. So based on the gauging, the routes all had to be signed off using the statement of compatibility, which obviously goes through the size of the train and the haulage, which is loco hauled. So the previous legacy weed spray delivery was 8 MPVs. and they deliver the first and second treatment of weed spray. So weed spray is, again, has been alluded to, is into 2 different treatments. Obviously, the residual being the first part, which rule of thumb runs from March until June, and then the second treatment June until approximately September. So MPVs were utilised across the year, doing what they say on the tin as multi-purpose vehicle, delivering weed spray in the spring and summer, and then going into autumn winter operations for railhead treatment. So due to the constant operations, this can impact the reliability of the MPV due to limited time for maintenance intervention. The MPV, also being over 20 years old, can impact reliability, and certainly there are issues around availability of spares with the age of the trains. So then going on to the new fleet introductions, there's the image of the main part of the train there during commissioning. So you can see the spray manifold just mounted on the wagon there. So our remit was to propose 3 new purpose-built trains, known technology from Europe, which were already in use in France and Germany, as I've said. The modules were to be mounted on 3 KFA wagons, which be hauled by a locomotive, and it's just a draw gear coupling. There's no electrical connection, it's only pneumatic, so it doesn't affect, or there's no limitations to what can haul the weed spray train. It can be any traction. It's modular wagon, as I've said, so these break into 1 wagon comprising the energy module and storage module, the centre wagon comprising the mixing module, control module and office module, and then the third one housing the 2 water tanks. The key thing with this train, or the key variance between this and the legacy fleet, is obviously the weed detection system. So Ben did mention the weed recognition. That's a capability that we're working on building up a database of the invasive species. That's work in progress. So currently it only does weed detection. And designed and built with startup technology partners, which is obviously the main part of it with the smart weeding system. So this was the scope, or the remit, that we had. So you can see the diagram there. You've got the up and down lines with measurements from the 6 foot, 4 foot, the cess and the flail strip. Now, from our design perspective, we only took into account, or our engineering team only took into account the width measurements, because there's no measurements as the gradient changes on this profile, for example. So the lower picture there is, if you look at each of these blue sections, that's the spray cone from that specific nozzle. So you've got the bank side, the ballast shoulder, outer track and inner track, and then obviously replicated on the opposite side there. So that was how the train was designed. Now, we then obviously had conversations with our customer about what we should deliver, and it was basically to replicate what the MPV does using a radiarc head, which is basically a movable head, which can change the angle of the nozzle to apply the spray. So currently, all of these nozzles under the train and on the side of the train were in a fixed pitch. So this wouldn't vary. That is basically the delivery we'd achieve with the current train. So we took into account what this could be, and then we moved on to a modification. So we only done the first part of the treatment last year due to this capability. And then we moved into modification, which you can see here. So the drawing there indicates that the spray cone, what you have now, with the nozzle mounted on a pedestal assembly. So it's now on top of the wagon, as opposed to on the side of the manifold. And you've got an image there of it being tested. So it has been successfully trialled and signed off. So that will be on the train and in action as of this year. So as it says there, modifications to relocate the upper nozzles from manifold to new pedestal arrangement for the more accurate scope, and articulate head used to achieve the movement as the target areas change. So obviously, no railway, as we all know, has the same topography. So where it changes, the operator's got a joystick, and so this is the view from the window. So they're literally looking out onto it and can adjust the pitch of the nozzle as the topography changes. So if we go on, what's actually on the wagons. So firstly, the energy and storage module. So the energy module comprising a 60 kVA generator to provide electrical power to the SWS train independently from the locomotive. So like I said, there's no electrical connection. So the SWS part is all self-powered with its own generator. So it's just a standard diesel generator that's obviously independent from the electrical power from the traction. And the open end of the energy module has 6 cameras and 10 spotlights mounted, which you can see in the far image there. So you've got 4 cameras at the top, obviously looking at opposite sides, and then 2 on the track, or 2 underneath the buffers there that look at the track. The storage module that can be loaded from each side, so you've got the 2 shutter doors. That arrangement's replicated on the opposite side, so we're not restricted on what roads we are on for access. And it can hold up to an additional 8,000 litres of herbicide, so 8 IBCs. Again, that will benefit from a planning perspective, so we won't have to be on a specific road that's got road or forklift access to carry on the loading operations. Then we've got the main part of the train, which is the mixing module. So it's a full hydraulic system comprising 4,000 litre tanks, which you can see on the right-hand side there. It's got 6 dosage pumps, 4 with a range of 5 to 10 litres per hectare, and 2 with a range of 2 to 5 litres per hectare. So the delivery rate there is basically to comply with the label, and that's what Ben was alluding to with the amenity assured. We have to follow what the product label are, and that's obviously where we've got those delivery rates from. 4 delivery lines to cover the required zones, track, ballast and bankside, and a water pump to deliver the main water supply and allow for homogeneous mixing. So the water pump operates between 1 and 3 bar depending on the train speed. So the water in this instance acts as the carrying agent for the chemical, so it achieves the distance. Then we've got the control module, which is obviously where the action happens, so to speak, comprising 2 operator seats, CCTV to avoid the necessity for a lookout to be within the cab of the locomotive. So it's full CCTV, so obviously from our side, so the not including what's covered in the geofencing, which is obviously water courses, bridges, etc. The CCTV to see any PWI workers and that sort of thing for lookouts, so they know to start and stop spraying accordingly. 22 nozzles located on the underframe, 16 in use at any one time, and that's because the track works in both directions. And then you've got 6 nozzles that 6 will work in one direction and 6 will work in the other direction. Office modules there for the welfare, so for any PMBs, that sort of stuff. So again, aiding the planning, so everything is there from a toilet, shower, sink, fridge and microwave, and workshop requirements for any quick fixes that are required. It also houses the spare parts to, obviously, we've got pumps, flow meters, etc. that obviously would save the shift if we needed to, tooling and all the PPE for handling chemicals. So the image there on the right-hand side is basically the pump screen. So you can see that these pumps have been set to 5 litres per hectare, 7 litres per hectare, and again 5. And they've been primed, which is why they're green. Red, they've not been denoted, so which is why they're red. And you can see the quantity levels of the tanks there, and they're all denoted as having water in. So this image would have been taken during commissioning. And then finally, the 2 water tanks, the 27,000 litre tanks, capacity reduced to 25,000 litres in each due to around 640 baffle balls in each tank, I believe. I didn't count them all as I put them in, but I can vouch there was quite a few. And that's obviously to reduce the movement of water, the sloshing effect, as it's technically known, I think, Andy.
Yeah.
The rear tank has cameras and spotlights mounted as well. So it's the same arrangement with the cameras and spotlights that we had on the energy module previously. And then you can see a closer picture of the manifolds. That's, as I said, that's the 3 nozzles. So you've got bankside, outer ballast, and cess there. That's it, obviously spraying during commissioning there. And the train delivers herbicide speeds of between 20 and 33. So first treatment with the residual is at 33 miles an hour. And then as Ben alluded to with the scrub or the second treatment, that's at a lower speed of 20. Reason for that, it's not as autonomous as first treatment. And it's at slower speed, so the operator has time to react to the change in vegetation with the scrub nozzles, especially now obviously they're mounted higher up. And delivery dosage, as we said, with the dosage pumps is between 2 and 10 litres per hectare. So the main part of the technology, the weed detection system uses an array of cameras, as we've shown the arrangement on the train. It measures the presence and density of weeds. This sends an electronic signal to the calculation module, which is within the control module. And then it will send a command to the solenoid valve to open and spray herbicide at the target. So the functionality of the train is controlled through a touchscreen interface, which is on the right-hand side there, that shows the status of the tanks and nozzles. So where you've got them blue, That means they're primed, ready to go, awaiting the command from the calculation module, as we've said. You can see what dosage pumps are active as well there, where they're highlighted green. So this is all set up. And I purposely use the one that's got restricted areas. So this is basically isolated now because of the geofencing we've got on it. So you get a restricted area banner come up on the control module screen, as well as this screen here is the weed detection. So you can see the percentage on the areas there, as well as the green is basically the weed density it's measuring. So on that right hand and left hand side, to be fair, it's around 43%, 45% weed density on that side. So due to the nature of chemicals and legislation, there are areas that are restricted and cannot be treated. This is managed via GPS and geofencing, as I've said. The spray system is isolated when within this envelope. It's also a fail-safe as well. So if the train loses signal at any point, it will default to restricted area. And finally, it's just some better pictures of the cameras. So train spotlights mounted at the extremities of the train, so as we said, on both ends. Obviously, it's one thing I haven't mentioned, so apologies, is that it's got a Doppler radar, so it'll pick up the direction of the travel. So it'll either activate the cameras and spotlights on either the energy module or the water tanks, depending on which direction we're travelling in. So it's additional spotlights underneath the wagon. This gives a full map of the weeds and direction of travel. And the image on the right-hand side there was obviously taken at night, and it's just demonstrating during commissioning. You can see obviously the two weeds were purchased at Aldi. I think they were basil rather than weeds, because the time of year we couldn't actually get any weeds. So you can see obviously the ballast that hasn't been sprayed there is obviously clear and as expected, and you can see the so you've got weed on the left hand side, and so you can see them all with the two main ones in the middle there, so you can see the coverage where it's picked it up. And then finally, I've added a video, so hopefully this will play. This was taken during commissioning as well. So you can see the spotlights there, and then you can see the odds spray just where it's picking up. You can see how bright the spotlights are there, because obviously this is during the day, so they're really bright.
The dogs opening and closing.
Yeah. So the key selling point obviously is the reduction in weeds, and this is obviously based on the weed detection. So it will spray for a shorter amount of time than it would if it was manually operated. Just trying to, sorry, I've lost my cursor. There we go, that is it.
Thank you, Adrian. Right, some questions, please.
Yeah, please. I find it incredibly interesting to see probably colour detection more than anything else is controlling of sprays, like where you had the plant. So I noticed that there was a dark green and a light green, and it commanded a percentage of spray.
It's not
colour definition.
It is colour definition, but the colour just relates to how dense that area is.
I see.
So it's not. It's going to display 100% regardless.
No.
The percentage is how dense that vegetation is.
If it's only lightly dense, then will it not spray at all?
You can configure it. So you can either pick up everything green, or you can have it less restricted.
One last question is looking at the capacity of your tanks. They're massive, 2 lots of 27,000. Obviously, with a given speed of 20 to 33 miles an hour, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Could you actually then say you can travel so many miles and cover that length and plan for that? Yeah,
no, indeed. So there was a very, very basic math in the bid model that showed we could do 300 miles in a shift, but that's not always feasible.
No.
So it's based on a 10-hour shift. But until we were operating, we didn't really figure out, or we didn't understand the amount of water we would use. So I think it works out roughly 300 litres per. It's not per minute. I can't think what it was, but it basically in a 100-mile shift, it will use about 22,000, 23,000 litres of water. So the main restriction we have, so although we've got the storage module that we can now have the 8 IBCs on, which benefits our planning, that we don't have to stop and load, we will have to take on a full supplement of water every 3 to 4 shifts because of the amount we use.
That helps you out in terms of the planning, because you don't know you're going back to a main depot every night.
No, exactly. So there's two methods with the planning at the moment, and one thing, so they've read across the planning for the MPVs currently, which means they'll go to a certain depot. So say, for example, they were operating a York Station. They'd radiate on the up and down from each one and then move on the sort of fifth or sixth night. Whereas what we want to try and achieve, especially now we're using the storage module, is to basically plot our way around the UK rather than operate out of a hub, as it were, would be to literally go around the UK. So obviously we've got 3 trains that are covering the same amount of rail as 8 MPVs were.
Oh,
So in real time, the system is detecting weeds
Mhm.
and adjusting what's going to be sprayed based on what's been detected. So as the train's moving along and it's working, it's constantly reading what weeds are there and then adjusting the spray based on what's been picked up.
In regards to it will command the solenoid to open that spray nozzle.
That's happening in real time as the train's moving
Yes,
along.
yeah.
And if the operator's not adjusting, that's automatic.
It's all automatic. It's based on the calculation module. There's 2 calculation modules, one for each direction. So it's almost like 2 independent systems for each direction. So one thing we are keen on emphasising is still operator led. So as Ben said, they're all basis competent, etc. So although the train is autonomous, it's still down to the human element to obviously manage that and make sure. So, for example, first treatment will still be quite manual. So they'll start the spray and stop the spray as and when, albeit that the restricted area will override that. So that will still isolate the train if they're not paying attention to where they are. Although there's 2 people, so one will be the lookout and one will be the spray captain, as it were.
And how sensitive is the effectiveness of the spray to the speed at which you're travelling? I know you said 20 to 33.
Mhm.
Knowing that driving a train at 33 miles an hour is quite hard.
Yeah.
What sort of tolerance is acceptable?
In regards to what?
The speed of the train.
The speed. So it's got the parameters. It's got a cut off, so it will stop spraying over 35 miles an hour. It just cuts out due to drift and everything else.
Yeah.
That answers your question, Colin? Yeah, good. The gentleman.
Yeah, your answer to Colin's question has prompted another question to ask first, and then my main question. So if the spraying is sensitive to speed of train,
Mhm.
is there any communication between the operator and the driver?
Yes, it's radio communication. So the driver will have a very rough diagram of where they're going.
Yeah.
But the operator, as Ben showed on one of their planning sheets, it's literally down to the mile and chain.
Yeah.
So they'll communicate with the driver about whether it's a transit speed or a treatment speed. So it varies between 60 and 33.
Yeah. Okay. The question I was going to ask then was about locomotives and locomotive utilisation. And your video, you had a locomotive at either end of the
Yes.
system,
Yeah.
which is a sort of typical model if you're operating on a hub and spoke principle. If you're going around the country in stages, can you do that with a single locomotive?
There's 2 reasons probably why we wouldn't. So first and foremost, that's discussions we're having with JSD as their management contract involves the planning on behalf of Network Rail. So it's a case of us will be able to try and demonstrate the benefits of that rather than what they've done for the last 20 years, obviously. So you certainly could just have one locomotive do it. You could potentially add additional 20 miles per shift where they're having to go around as opposed to just changing an end terminus, and also reliability. So obviously if that loco fails, then the shift's dead.
Okay, all right.
Joined on the presentation.
One question.
I might
Yeah,
stop on
back
that,
there, yeah.
There we go.
2 seconds.
Sorry, go on.
What's the basic principle of detecting weeds? You know, it's just say it, but how does a machine detect there are weeds? And secondly, do you have some form of data recorder so that you can demonstrate to the environment agency, for example, that in that restricted area you did not actually spray, prove you didn't do it as opposed to what the program says?
There'll be 2 things. So first and foremost, there'll be the sheet that Ben demonstrated for planning. That gets signed and annotated where the treatment is carried out, for example. So that's what goes to Network Rail as a record of what was done. We've also got a web platform, so everything that's done on the train transmits to a web platform, and we've got it in a format that we can show where we've plotted around the UK.
So that's independent of the operator, is it?
Yeah, it does that anyway. Yeah, so the train will transmit all the information, so it'll be where it went, what chemical was used. It shows the weed density as well. So future work that we could use these trains for surveys, because they're constantly recording the weed density in an area, whereas at the moment surveys carried out by a resource in a van that will go to a level crossing or a bridge or anything. So we've got more accessibility from using the train, albeit that'll involve more planning and that, obviously.
And first part was, how exactly do you detect weeds? What's the basic principle?
It's based on chloroform, so it will pick up it's colour orientated, so it picks up the colour. Chlorophyll. Thanks.
Okay. I'm not a biologist, but it was close enough for me. I've got a question online. From Mr. Flynn. Hi, Pete. Does the nozzle range adjust in sympathy with the track cant value and direction, or does this have to be adjusted by the operator?
So the only nozzles that can be affected with the pitch are the new bankside nozzles. So the nozzles that are mounted that will be the bankside flail scrub, whichever title you want to call it. So they are solely operated by the operator, and they've got like a 45-degree range.
The main manifold is fixed, then.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, Louise.
Right, is it W6A?
It's W6A. Yeah. Pretty much. I think we still had a couple of hundred restrictions, didn't we?
So,
from memory.
Omnicom supported the gauging. An old colleague of Ben's, Carrie's day.
Yeah.
And it was, is she online?
That was a yes from Ben, I think.
Oh, okay. It got W6A, tick in the box, absolutely brilliant. And it was an absolute gauging exercise. As some of you will know, Tim in the room, there's 11,000 obstructions to W6. This vehicle is less than 1,000 obstructions from the W6 fouled structures, and Omnicom awarded it the best train that they've done in the last 5 years. So it's very, very compliant.
I hope you got a trophy.
And is wearing it.
Extremely compliant.
Did I hear in the presentation that there's a default that says if the train loses signal, it automatically defaults to restricted area? Does that mean we've now got an issue where we can't spray unless there's a mobile phone signal?
It's got 4 SIM cards on it, and it will select which has got the best reception.
Okay.
But you can overwrite, you can turn it off with an engineer's PIN number. You can log in and turn off restricted areas. Not you would, but then, like we say, it's operator led anyway.
So I guess the operators will get to know areas where you're in a really deep cutting and struggle, and will.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I haven't been made aware that there was any mobile issues last year, and certainly looking at the web platform, it was all on there. But like I say, it's got 3 SIM cards with different providers. So yeah, it's got several different providers.
So does it use normal mobile, not the Network Rail mobile?
That's normal mobile, yeah.
Connected to that, does that mean that you're sending any black spots that you did pick up? Do those get sent with the other telemetry back to? You said there's the remote telemetry that gets sent. Do you send any black spots or any where it defaults back to a script?
I'd have to find that out, to be fair, from the data analyst that built the web platform.
So I suppose then if there's a consistent black spot popping up, then it's something that
you could look at something for that. Yeah.
Just as a matter of interest, what's happened to the other 8 MPVs?
I know there's 4 on standby for weed spray, and the other 4 I don't know.
Sat in the
maybe. Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. I know there's 4 on standby.
Treatments as far as I understand.
Yeah, they're still doing the autumn and winter stuff. Yeah.
Having tried partially successfully in the past to introduce welfare on Network Rail fleets, you mentioned there's a toilet on board. Is it working?
It's a toilet by name.
How is it managed, or is it used as a storeroom for?
No, it's a Thetford model camping toilet basically. So it is, yeah, it is functioning. I haven't got video of it, obviously.
So does the emptying of the toilet fall within Ben's maintenance contract, or is that something that?
No, it's the third party that will attend. So it's part of our provision from GBRF, who's got the main contract. Obviously, JSD a subcontractor of theirs, but there is a third party that will come and empty the toilets.
Okay. To know.
Any more questions?
We can't end on that question.
Accessibility, it's about maximising how many people can work on the train, you know.
No, exactly, and that was the logic. So if you think about a lot of what the train's got on it is all to achieve an easier planning. So the fact you haven't got to go into a station for a PMB and that sort of stuff is obviously a benefit.
Question from the back from Phil.
Just looking at the track diagrams, I just wondered whether the train will spray adjacent tracks as well as the running line on which it's sited.
If they're close enough and pick up weeds on it, yeah. If the adjacent track's close enough, then yes, it would, yeah.
So can you do a stretch of, normal separation up and down lines in one pass?
You can. One thing that they, having been on a few of the operational shifts, left and right hand spray assembly is can be turned on and off. So if they're only working on one side and you've got the adjacent tracks obviously on the right hand side, for example, they can obviously turn everything off on the right hand side to only spray on the left hand side.
But you can't do both lines at the same time.
We're only the range is 5.5 meters from the centre of the track, so it would depend on how close it is.
There's many areas, Phil, where you don't have a standard 6 foot and the separation is much greater than us.
Yeah,
it's only 6 foot by 9.
You don't want to spray the passenger trains coming in the way.
No.
Any more questions? Anyone left? No? No? Can't see any takers. Right, I'll hand over to Ben for vote of thanks and closing the evening.
Okay, Adrian, really interesting presentation. I think the two work together remarkably well. So thanks again to Ben for stepping in at short notice as well. But it looks like a fantastic piece of technology and also something that will evolve further with time. As you say, the next generation or the next logical thing is to be able to identify different types of vegetation and deal with it differently. So yeah, that's interesting. We'll maybe back again in a couple of years' time to tell us how that's going. So okay, if we can say thanks in the usual way, that would be great. So a couple of PWI bits to type at the end while Andy looks up when his next meeting is, just so he can refer to it again. So Niall Fagan HS2 transferable learning is likely to, well, it will be on the 16th of February, likely to be back in George Stevenson House. The reason for that is our Vice President, who is also our entry key to this building, has a new arrival on the way and will hopefully be on paternity leave around the next meeting. So I hope all goes well, Gareth, but we'll be back in George Stevenson House next time. Which floor is anyone's guess? We've still got to work on that. We've got a charity box on the way out. I can confirm with an additional contribution that we tagged on from the committee, we contributed £315 to the Railway Children last year as the PWI section. So the box does take notes as well as coins. So don't feel, if you've not got loose change, don't feel like you can't contribute. Usual process from here is we head over to the York Tap for anyone that wants to come with us for a pint. So thanks again to those that joined online. Andy, over to you for any closing words.
So yeah, just a reminder, 22nd of February in Doncaster for the IMechE, we should see the Young Engineers competition. So any graduates or the volunteered people, point to my way, please. So yeah, thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you.
Cheers.
Yeah,
Cheers, thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. Thank you.
Cheers, Sal.
Leave your thoughts, say that. Yeah.